Hey folks, apologize for the delay tonight. I had some issues. My MacBook downloaded some updates or something, and all of a sudden my camera would not work with Facebook Live. So anyway, if you're here, let me know you're here. Let's see here, try another way of going live. Okay, there you go. All right, apologize for the problems, but anyway, hey Jeff, hey Diane, glad you guys are watching tonight. So this is a little bit on the fly here because I'm not doing my usual setup. I'm having to sit here and hold the phone too. So anyway, but we are glad to be able to be with you tonight. What a beautiful day today! Just an awesome day that God gave us, and just a great day to drive with the windows down and things of that nature. But anyway, so I want to talk to you tonight about a couple of things. First of all, just to kind of get started, you know, obviously we're in an unprecedented season, clearly, a historical time that we're living in. And, you know, there are unprecedented events happening, unprecedented governmental decisions and actions that none of us in our lifetime have ever lived through before. And there also is a wide division of opinions about everything that I have just stated. And so the recipe for that really brings a lot of criticism, and criticism abounds right now. You've got people on all sides of the whole COVID-19 issue, and people that disagree with that and agree with this and whatever. I actually saw a video the other day. Some of my pastor friends were sending this around just as a kind of a laugh, but it was a video of a pastor in East Tennessee, and he was preaching in his church on Sunday morning with people in there when obviously we're supposed to be just doing online. And this guy was basically just screaming and spitting and smacking the pulpit and calling other pastors who were not having church in their building. Matter of fact, he called out one guy who was doing an outdoor service in their parking lot and basically told him that you had to be an idiot to sit in front of a $2 million building and preach a sermon on a $3,000 trailer, called people noodle-spined, lily-livered idiots just for doing these outdoor services or going online. And, some of those, some of the folks that refuse to follow the recommended guidelines of COVID-19, the thing about it is that some of the people that kind of were on his end of the spectrum that refused to follow any guidelines whatsoever, some of those pastors actually contracted the virus and died. So, you know, it was tragic on both sides. Conspiracy theories abound, obviously. That's always the case. When you're looking and investigating, sometimes the more information you get, the more questions come up instead of the more answers. So I understand that. People are calling it the plandemic instead of the pandemic and all of that. Even, even before COVID-19, honestly, in our culture, we had kind of lost the ability to disagree respectfully. And so I want to talk just a little bit before we get into any kind of specifics right now. I want to talk just a little bit about kingdom values and the things that are important to God in his kingdom as opposed to what we see going on in the world right now. And the first thing that I want to talk about briefly is a kingdom value is unity. This would refer to the prayer request of Jesus in John 17. In John 17, verse 11, again, kind of bear with me here. I'm running out of hands. In John 17, verse 11, Jesus said, I will remain in the world no longer, but they are still in the world, and I'm coming to you. He's praying to God. He says, Holy Father, protect them by your power, the power of your name, the name you gave me, so that, here comes the reason, so that they may be one O-N-E. One as we are one. And then we move down to verse 20 and 21, 22. It says, my prayer is not for them alone, but also I pray for all of those who will believe in me through their message, that all of them may be one. There it is again. That all of them may be one, Father, just as you and I are one, just as you and me and I in you. May they also be in us, so that the world may believe that you've sent me. I've given them the glory that you gave me. Here we go again. That they may be one, as we are one. I and them, and you and me. And then he says this in verse 23. May they be brought to complete unity, to let the world know that you sent me. So clearly, unity in the body of Christ is a kingdom value. I've often said, sort of as a joke, but it's really the truth. Jesus prayed a handful of words and raised Lazarus from the dead. And he prayed multiple times in John 17 for unity in the body of Christ, and that still is not engaged. So what that lets me know is that obviously it's easier to raise the dead than it is to get people to live in unity. And so we just need to understand for a second, this is kind of the baseline here, that unity in the body of Christ is a kingdom value. And he said specifically in these verses in John 17, it would be one of the things, one of the reasons, one of the witnesses to the world that we are really his disciples. Is if we can get along, if we can operate in unity. So unity is a kingdom value. Second kingdom value that I want to talk about real quick is humility. And for this, we are going to turn to Philippians chapter 2, verses 3 through 5. And this is what it says. Philippians chapter 2, verse 3, do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, but in humility, consider others better than yourselves. Each of you should look not only to your own interests, but also to the interests of others. And then he caps it off in verse 5. Your attitude should be the same as that of Jesus Christ. And then he goes on into that great description of who, being in the very nature of God, did not consider equality with God something to be grasped. We don't really have time to dive into that tonight, all of that. But just the fact of humility is a kingdom value. He talks about preferring others, looking out for others. And, it occurs to me when I was watching this gentleman, and I use the term loosely, watching this gentleman preaching this message and calling every other pastor that was basically trying to work within the guidelines to keep their congregation safe, calling them idiots and noodle-spined, lily-livered, all this kind of stuff. You know what I think is totally absent from that attitude? Humility. That attitude is based solely in arrogance and pride and in thinking that they know better than everybody else. And so, humility is a kingdom value. Unity is a kingdom value. So we should avoid criticism during these days. You know what? I don't agree with everything that our government has done. I don't agree with everything that I see out there. But it doesn't do me any good to criticize, especially, church pastors criticizing each other. That's one of the things that's been such a blessing as we've gathered together a group of pastors in DeSoto County that have called themselves the Church United. It's been a great blessing to not be critical of each other, but to actually cooperate and collaborate and work together as a team. I think that honors God. And so anyway, we should avoid criticism. You know what? When someone doesn't agree with you and when you don't agree with them, let's recapture the ability to have some grace in our life for other people. And just because someone, you know what, just because someone doesn't agree with me doesn't mean that they're mentally handicapped. It doesn't mean that they're, that they have no facilities, no faculties operating up here in their cranium. It just means that they see things a different way. And so we need to be able to give some grace and try to avoid this criticizing, because humility and criticizing others cannot coexist. I've never seen anyone criticize someone else from a motivation of humility. And so humility is definitely a kingdom value that we need to lock onto. And criticism generally is based on arrogance. And so one last thing that I want to talk to you about before we get into some specifics about the reopening schedule and strategies is this. Verse 5 says, your attitude should be the same as that of Jesus Christ. And so one thing that I believe is important is that part of unity and part of humility is that I sometimes need to be willing to be inconvenienced. I'm going to let that sink just a second. We need to be willing to be inconvenienced for the good of others. And when I see what Jesus did, and it says our attitude should be like his, he was clearly willing to be inconvenienced to be a blessing in other people's lives. And so to be Christ-like brings that inherent character. Why am I talking about inconvenience? Well, I'm glad you asked me that. One of the reasons I'm talking about inconvenience is because some of the strategies and some of the things that we're going to have to do to re-engage our on-site services is going to mean a fair amount of inconvenience for all of us. And so I want you to understand that. We understand that there's radically different opinions out there about what's going on and how we should handle it. And we're not living in fear. Never have. This has never been about fear. As far as us complying with the recommendations and doing online ministry instead of on-site service, that was never about living in fear. It was about basically trying to operate in wisdom and putting others first. And as you know, the result of this online ministry has been that online we have reached 5 to 6 times more people with our weekend services than we ever had in person. And so it hasn't been a bad season at all. It's been a great season. We've seen many people come to Christ through our online ministry, and we're very excited about that. We're very excited as well about re-engaging our on-site ministry and watching what the Lord does. And so anyway, again, we're not living in fear, but we do want to try to minister as effectively as we possibly can to every person on either side of that perception issue, those that think this thing is a hoax and those that are scared to death and won't leave their house. We're going to try to minister effectively to the entire spectrum as much as we possibly can. So let me talk to you a little bit about our reopening schedule. Now, I don't have the kind of detail that you want for this, but let me just tell you what is the case here. As you know, our church has been a part of a group of local pastors from different backgrounds and denominations that have been working together. We called it the Church United. And so local pastors in this group, we have been meeting with government officials, with our mayor, and asking. We actually had worked 3 or 4 weeks ago on a plan, a reopening plan with recommended church guidelines to be able to give to every church in the county, and basically to try to help people get ready for on-site services again and get ready to do this as good as we possibly can. But then the governor extended the stay at home or the safer at home order, and that kind of messed up our scheduling. But Monday morning was contacted, got an email from the mayor, and so asked us to participate in a meeting to give some input. And so basically, right now, there's not a concrete date. You're going to want that, and I don't have it for you. There's not a concrete date, but we are working on dates. And the group of churches that were in that meeting had ranges of between May 17th was the earliest opening. We actually were preparing to have a possibility for on-site services on May the 17th until the governor extended the Safer at Home order. And then there are some churches in our group that are not planning to meet on site at all until the end of June. And some people might react and say, well, why are they doing that? Well, because they have good reasons why. Maybe they have a lot of older folks in their congregation who tend to be a little more susceptible to the virus and are more endangered by it. They're already packed in multiple services. So in order to keep social distancing, they would have to have like 7 or 8 services on a Sunday. So there are people that are doing things that are right for them. And it is not our job at all to criticize what any other church is doing. Every church is doing the best that they can during these days. And we need to give some people some grace and stop thinking that we know better, because, armchair quarterback is not a spiritual gift. I'll bet you that one gets quoted. There goes a tweet. Armchair quarterback is not a spiritual gift. But anyway, so we are working on a schedule. We believe right now that we will be able to get on site for worship services before the end of May. That's as detailed as I can give you right now, because we're still working on it as a team and with the governmental officials. So you will hear details from us as soon as we know them. But thank you for praying for us as we make these kind of decisions. There's no right or wrong answer in this. No one size fits all. And so anyway, Cornerstone fell in that earlier date range, and there were some other churches, like I say, that weren't even planning to have on-site services until maybe the end of June. We were going to try to get back as soon as we possibly can, and so we're working on it. So stay tuned. That's the schedule, and that's all I can give you, because that's all the solid information that we have as of yet. Again, we are shooting for a date before the end of May for Cornerstone at the South Haven campus. Now, I'll say this, the Tupelo campus will not be able to be on site until at least Father's Day. And the reason is because the building there is so much smaller. They're in more services than we are, and they've got a lot of their services are packed. So to be able to do social distancing and keep things the way that we need to do it right now in this season, our Tupelo campus would end up having to have 6 services or 7 services. It's just not feasible. And so South Haven will be able to start back on site a little bit sooner because of the situation that we're in. Again, each type situation is specific. And so, again, no right, no wrong, no one size fits all. But that's a little bit about the schedule, and I know you want more information about that, but that's all I can give you right now. Now I want to talk to you a little bit about strategies and some things that you're going to need to be ready for. What do you expect? What's it going to look like? Well, there's some things that we've worked out, and these are part of the guidelines that we have put together as a group of churches, and also to be able to give to other churches and just try to help people be ready. One of the things is this: you can't tell a 3-year-old to social distance. Some of you adults, I know, you're not going to be able to do it either. But a 3-year-old, so there will be no children's church. There for the first few weeks of on-site service, there will not be children's ministry separate from what's going on in the auditorium, because you can't have social distancing with 3 and 4-year-olds, and it's impossible. It doesn't work. Plus, if we were to even try that, a lot of the time some of the workers are going to be wearing masks when we get back. I haven't even said that yet, but some of our people will be wearing masks. Well, you can't put kids in a group in a room with some people with masks on. It might be scary to them. And so that's one of the things that you can expect. For a few weeks, there will not be children's ministry on site. And that's a big deal for us, because Cornerstone is all about children's ministry. And so we won't be able to have it separate. I do have a good surprise to let you in on here as we go a little further here. So no cafe, no coffee. You won't be able to get the world famous Cornerstone breakfast burrito at South Haven campus. It's not going to be available. We're not going to do food service. We're not going to do anything like that, because we want to avoid the possible transmission of potential virus, et cetera, et cetera. We will have an abbreviated service time because we will have children. It will be family services. Families will sit together in the auditorium. And because of that, shorter attention spans, etc., we will have a little bit of an abbreviated service time from what we would normally have. The other things you can expect, similar to what we were doing the last Sunday that we were actually on site, no physical contact. We can't hug and be high-fiving and handshakes and all of that. We're going to try to go by the guidelines to keep people safe. Not just for, it's not, you say, well, you might be saying, well, you know what? I'm not scared. That doesn't bother me. I'm not afraid. Well, there may be someone that is. And again, if you remember the scriptures we just read, if you combine them all together, it comes up with a principle that says this: it's not about me. It's not about me. It's about others. Surprisingly enough, the vast majority of the population of the planet is made up of others. And we'll think about that for a second. And so, anyhow, no physical, we're going to avoid the hugs and the high fives and the handshakes and stuff for a while. We won't be passing offering containers. There will be nothing passed out, no worship guides. None of those things will be passed out between people. We're not going to have hand-to-hand things. We're actually going to have the doors propped open so that you can just walk straight into the building. You won't have to touch doorknobs or anything like that, except for in the bathrooms. Obviously, we'll let those doors close. There'll be, now here's another thing you need to be ready for. We will have no touch, those little laser beam temperature scanners. We'll have those at all of the entrances and exits so that we're actually taking people's temperature on the way into service. And if your temperature is above the recommended limit, then, we're going to have to say, you know what, sorry, you're over the limit. We would ask you to please just worship with us online today. And the reason is because we don't want to put other people at risk, because we all know at this point that you could have the virus and be able to transmit the virus without really any symptoms, but certainly you can when the symptoms are there. We've got all new hand sanitizer units that are being installed at all the entrances and all the exits. So we'll have hand sanitizer, out the back door, all of that. Families will sit together in the worship center. And here's another thing. We've actually put more seats in the auditorium so that we could skip rows. You'll have your family will sit together. You may be ushered to a certain section. Again, be willing to be inconvenienced. And so we'll have every other row blocked off. For the first service, we will have to go to multiple services again in the South Haven campus because of social distancing. And so we've put more seats in the auditorium. And so basically we'll sit everyone on the even rows, the even numbered rows, like row 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, whatever. We'll set people on the even rows on one service when the odd rows will be taped off. And then between services, we'll remove the tape and retape the even numbers, and the people will sit on the odd rows. What does that mean? That means that you won't be sitting in the same seat someone else sat in, because we wouldn't be able to sanitize them between the services. It's cloth, So I may be giving you more detail than you want there. Anyway, every other row blocked off, 6 feet between family groups. We want to maintain social distancing. Now, here's the thing with your children. I know that I realize that some people will say, you know what, if we're not having children's ministry on site, then I think we'll just continue to worship at home. And you're more than welcome to do that. But we are providing things for your kids on site. There will be little bags of things for your kids with coloring sheets that correlate with the message, the topic of the message, and we're going to be recording about 15 minutes worth of children's ministry programming like we've been doing online. And so we would encourage, your kids, If your kids can sit there and they absorb and they can color and not, and not get antsy or whatever, then that's great. And if your kid might not be able to do that, bring a tablet. If you bring a tablet, get on the Wi-Fi and then bring headphones. That way you can have your kids watching the actual children's ministry service with headphones on a tablet while the message is going on in the auditorium, so that while you're hearing the adult message, they're hearing the children's ministry message on a tablet with headphones. And so they'll be fine during worship. We just think that it might be a little taxing for them for the message part. So we're planning everything we possibly can to try to help your family be able to worship well together. And so there'll actually be a little craft in that goodie bag too. And so let's see, I think I've covered all that. Again, service time will be abbreviated a little bit, be probably an hour or less. The building will be thoroughly sanitized between the services. Service times will be 9:30 and 11:15. We are purposefully adding 45 minutes between the services to be able to have time to sanitize, re-sanitize the bathrooms and any doorknobs or anything like that, and switch out the seating arrangements in the auditorium. So all of that is going. We are going to go over and above to make, and we always have a clean building, but we're going over and above to make sure this place is absolutely sanitized and ready to go. So that's kind of some of the strategies. Again, it'll be announced later as far as the actual start date. It will be soon. Then the other thing is this: how do we keep 90% of the people from showing up in the first service and then nobody there in the second? Well, we're working on a system right now to be able to handle that. And so just watch your social media and watch your email, and we will get that to you well in advance of the time you need it, so that we can make sure that the service crowds are distributed evenly. Now, if you're in a higher risk group, if you already have pre-existing conditions that make you more susceptible, there is no shame at all in continuing to worship online. We want you to be safe. We care more about you than we do about whether or not you're sitting in the building when we're having on-site services. So we want you to be safe. So use wisdom. Pray about it and use wisdom. And we are looking forward to the day. It will be coming when we will be able to not hear about this virus, and it won't be on the news, and we'll be back just blowing and going in our church on-site services. And in those days, we believe that we're also going to have a whole lot of first-time guests and a whole lot of people that are coming into the church at Cornerstone that have been watching us online for several weeks now too. So we believe that God is really using this. But anyway, those were just a few of the things that I wanted to share with you, and just to kind of give you a little bit of an update. I know it's not the detail that you wanted as far as the exact date, but just stay tuned. We are working to try to get this thing rolling on site before the end of May. And so we will let you know as soon as we possibly can. We were actually planning for this Sunday, but because of the extension of Safer at Home, we're kind of working with that with our city government about how to handle all of that right now. So anyway, don't forget unity and humility and preferring others above ourselves, and be willing to be inconvenienced, because it's not about any one of us. And so we're going to do everything we can to minister as effectively as we possibly can. But we're also going to do everything we can to keep everyone as safe as we possibly can. And we really appreciate your prayers during these days, because this has been the weirdest season ever of trying to lead a church. But at the same time, God is doing some amazing things that we are so excited about. And so I believe as we all stay together in unity and humility, we all realize that it's not about us, that we can work together and we can see God do some amazing things in our future. Remember, last year as we were praying and fasting, we felt very strongly that God told us that 2020 would be the year of greater things. Now, we had no idea that Greater Things would include a pandemic or tornadoes that came through our area. Both campuses had tornadoes coming close to their areas. But I believe that it is ultimately going to be the year of greater things, because we are seeing so many people reached with our online ministry. And so thank you for your prayers. We miss you guys. I was able to see somebody in the church today that I hadn't talked to in months, and it was awesome. We can't wait to be able to talk to you. And at some point, yes, we'll be able to hug and high five and shake hands and all of that stuff. But just for this little season, we got to do what we got to do to make it work for everyone. And so thank you so much. Thanks for watching, taking the time tonight. And we just want you to know we're praying for you. We get the prayer requests from the online services. We're praying for those. We're really being diligent to try to minister as effectively as we possibly can. And so we thank you for praying for us during these days. All right. God bless you. That's really all I have to share with you right now. And there'll be more details coming out as time goes along here in the very near future. But what a great team we have. What an amazing staff. At both campuses. It's just, God has so blessed us, and we're reaching more people than we ever dreamed. And I know that it's really, we're just getting started. And so thank you so much for watching tonight, and pray that God will bless you, and we really look forward to seeing everyone. God bless you, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.